Rajni Sharma sir, are you there with us? Can you speak up if you're there with us, or else we'll continue with the program? Respected members, I welcome you all to the 10th series of a Local for Vocal, the program coined by the very chairman, Sri Shiv Bhagwan Asava. The main idea behind this program was to encourage the local speakers, and we could share their knowledge with all of us, which would help us to grow together, which has been the motto of Thane branch. Thane branch at the same time has been organizing various events for members and students. This Sunday, we have a very unique event that Thane branch had started. Before going ahead, I'll just like to diverge 1 minute to tell you more about this program so that more and more students can be benefited out of it. Lately, the CA students' results were out. As many dreams were completed, a lot of dreams were shattered after the results. Doing this, so our only intention was to build the confidence among all those people who could not clear the examination. Phoenix is one event that the Thane branch is organizing for the CS members, where the only intention is how to get back to your feet again after your failures and how to get determined to clear your CA examination again within the next 2-3 months. So do encourage all the CA students who could not clear it to the list this time so that they feel motivated again and they're ready to go to achieve their dreams. Coming back to the various events we are organizing, currently we are going on with the 10th series of Local for Vocal. We will be coming up with a Taxathon Part 3, where we have speakers across India who on various tax topics, mainly concentrating on direct taxation and indirect taxation. Apart from this, if any one of you do wish to become a speaker at any of our forum, please feel free to get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to organize an event for us. Apart from that, if any one of you do feel that we should organize an event of your likes or on any other subject, kindly let us know. We'll be happy to organize the same. Today's event is a very unique event. Like yesterday, it's again concentrating on the topic of trust. The topic of the event is registration of trust and compliance under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950. And today we have the very experienced and a seasoned speaker, CA Ravi Gupta ji. Now, talking about CA Ravi Gupta ji, CA Ravi Gupta ji is a partner, is a founding partner of Ravi B. Gupta and Company, having more than 25 years of experience in the profession. He renders services in various fields, from tax to audit, from financial planning to tax planning, for formations of company, also in RERA and formation of partnership trust. He has cleared his insolvency examinations in October 2017 and till date has offered support and services in insolvency resolution cases. He was also a member of the Cooperative Societies Committee of WRC of ICI for the period FY 2021. He has spoken on various forums, formation and taxation of charitable trust, foreign contribution and regulation act, corporate social responsibility are some of the topics that he has always spoken on. He has addressed and interacted with various senior officers of the CAG on the audit and taxation of charitable trust, institution, NGOs. He has addressed office bearers of the leading educational institutes and medical institutes with regards to the formation and taxation of charitable trust, along with recent amendments in the Maharashtra Public Trust Act and Income Tax Act. Sir's introduction is very long because he has done so many feats in such a short span of his career, and we are really grateful that he is able to spare some time to enlighten us with his knowledge today. Now, without any further ado, I request and I thank CA Ravi Gupta ji for being with us, and I request him to take over the platform from here. Ravi ji?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, please.
I'm audible?
Yes, sir, you are very much audible, sir.
Thank you so much. At the very outset, I would like to thank all the office bearers of the Thane branch of WIRC of ICI for giving me this opportunity on speaking, basically for speaking on the subject, the formation of charitable trust. Basically, at the very outset, I would like to make the point very clear that we will be dealing with charitable trusts, public charitable trusts. So, because why I want to specify this is because there are private trusts also and public trusts also. So today we'll be talking about public charitable trusts. And with this very short, with this few words from beginning words, opening remarks from me, I would like to, with the consent of all the participants, I would like to move on to the subject right away, so that we can have some time for question and answers at the end of the session. I think this session should take at around 1 hour 15 minutes, and then we can have some 15-20 minutes for question answers. And then too, if there are some other queries left out, I mean, I have shared my contact numbers. I will share my PPT also with the office bearers, and I have shared my email ID also. So the participants or the students who have some queries regarding the subject, they can always get in touch with me, and I will try my level best to address their queries. So with this, we get on to the subject, formation of charitable trusts and institutions. So the introductory part is, why do we form a charitable trust? And then charitable trust by, as far as this session is concerned, by charitable trust, I mean public charitable trust, as I have made it very clear at the beginning. And then we talk about formation of trust, who can form a trust, who can be a trustee, then requisites of trust, the requisites of the trust in the sense what all is required for a trust to be registered with the Charity Commissioner's office, or a Section 8 company which is registered with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Then essentials of a valid trust, what all are required so that your trust can be validly registered. And then registration of trust company. Registration in the sense, registration with the Charity Commissioner and registration with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Once again, that is Section 8 company. Earlier, this Section 8 company under the Companies Act 1956 was Section 25 company. Earlier, the non-profit making organization section was Section 25. Now, after the new Companies Act, that is Companies Act 2013, the section has changed from 25 to Section 8, basically. So this is what it is. So let us move on with the subject. So first of all, first and foremost, why do we form a charitable trust? Why do we form most of the things as far as this PPT? I will share my PPT. One more request which I would like to make to all the participants is the wherever there is a definition part, I would skip the definition part, because I mean reading it over and over again will not make sense. It will not do justice with the time allotted for the subject. So I will skip the definition part, but of course I will address all the important points. Don't worry about it. So, why is the trust formed? For discharge of charitable and or religious sentiments of the author or settler. Then, why charitable trust again? For claiming income tax exemptions under Section 10 and 11. And then the third point, very important point, for the proper management and preservation of the property held by the charitable trust. So this is why we form a charitable trust. Then how it can be formed? The other most important point is how it can be formed. As I told you, as I just covered the subject, I just a couple of minutes before I told you that it can be formed in three ways. One is you can register a charitable trust under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950. The other thing is you can register a society under the Societies Registration Act 1860, and then a company under Section 8 of the Companies Act 2013. So these are the three ways in which you can form a non-profit making organization, NGO, public charitable trust. All are synonymous. Most of the times the members may come across queries saying we want to come up with an NGO. So there is no separate registration as far as NGO is concerned. When you talk about an NGO, in other words, it is a public charitable trust. So let us be very clear about it. A public charitable trust is an NGO. All the NGOs are public charitable trust or companies under Section 8 of the Companies Act 2013. Now, most of the times, a lot of people are confused that what we should form. Should we form a trust under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950, or we should come up with a society under the Societies Registration Act 1860, or we should come up with a Section 8 company, basically. So this is normally we come across a lot of queries. Sir, what is the right constitution for us? So let us come to the description as far as these three different types of constitutions are concerned. So first and foremost, we will cover trust under Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950. Now, earlier this Maharashtra Public Trust Act was called as the Bombay Public Trust Act 1950. Of late, it has been changed. I think from 15/5/2019. It has been changed to Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950. Now, under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, the Charity Commissioner is the guardian of all the public trusts. The provisions of Maharashtra Public Trust are applicable to societies registered under the Societies Registration Act 1860. So, what does this mean? What this means is, if you are registering your organization under the Societies Registration Act 1860, by default, you get a certificate under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950. And for all practical purposes in future, the number allotted under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950 is recognized by the Office of the Charity Commissioner. For example, for submission of accounts, for submission of change reports, for all practical purposes, the number allotted under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act is recognized by the Charity Commissioner. So, in other words, what it means is, if you register under the Societies Registration Act, first of all, you get a certificate under the Societies Registration Act 1860, and then you get one more certificate by default under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950. So, for all practical purposes, you will be registered under both the acts. Then number four is trust is a legal entity created by one party. What is that one party? The one party settler. The settler settles a certain property or an amount in favor of the trustees for the benefit of the third party, that is the beneficiaries. And mind well, in a public charitable trust, the beneficiaries are the public at large. The beneficiaries are always a fluctuating body. In a private trust, the beneficiaries are restricted. Whereas in a public charitable trust, the beneficiaries are always a fluctuating body. So, one more important point which I would like to tell you over here is, a settler can be a settler and a trustee also. In other words, the settler may be a trustee or may not be a trustee. He may not opt to be a trustee, but yes, he can be a trustee if he so decides. Then the subject matter of the trust is known as trust property, and the document is the document by which a trust is created is known as the trust deed. Now, charitable purpose is defined over here, but at the same time, the charitable purpose is defined under the Income Tax Act also. For all practical purposes, I would suggest that we should always keep in mind the definition of charitable purpose under the Income Tax Act also. Under the Income Tax Act, Section 215 tells you about what is a charitable purpose. The definition is given there. More or less, it is the same, but of course, under the Income Tax Act, there are certain other activities which are also considered as charitable purposes over and above what is mentioned in the Maharashtra Public Trust Act. Now, societies, again, nothing much to talk about societies. Societies Registration Act 1860, society is a group of persons who are associated together for a common purpose. Now, what is the difference between a Societies Registration Act? Of course, I would like to take you back to the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, where I told you that you have a settler in a trust created under Maharashtra Public Trust Act by a trust deed. Whereas in a society registered under the Societies Registration Act, there is no settler. There is a group of people. They come together and they form a society. Right? Conclusion. The purpose for which a trust is created is that the trustees will hold the property of the settlor for the benefit of the public, whereas society is a group of people coming together to form a society to promote any scientific, literary, charitable, etc., etc. So this is what the conclusion is. Now coming to Section 8 company. Section 8 company is licensed under Section 8 of the Companies Act 2013. Main objects again are mentioned out here. Now over here, as we have already discussed, all these are non-profit making organizations. So no dividend will be paid to the members as far as a company registered under Section 8 is concerned. Now, after a brief description of all these three constitutions, we would like to. I have come up with a comparative chart, so that you can. I mean, it will give a bird's eye view. What is the difference among all these three constitutions? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? So the very first point is registered. Where it is registered, we have already covered. The trust is registered under Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950. Society is registered under Societies Registration Act 1860, and company is registered under the Companies Act 2013. So these are the three different acts whereby a non-profit making organization is registered. Then coming to the jurisdiction, the trusts are governed by the deputy registrar or the charity commissioner of the relevant area. In Maharashtra, talking about Maharashtra, we have a charity commissioner's office, whereby all the trusts under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act are registered. Then as far as the jurisdiction of a society is concerned, the societies are also registered with the charity commissioner as far as Maharashtra is concerned. In short, the charity commissioner deals with both the types of constitutions. The Maharashtra charity commissioner deals with the registration of societies under Society Registration Act as well as trust under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act. And as you all know, Section 8 company, again, it is registered under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Now, registration document. For a trust, we have a trust deed. For societies, we prepare the memorandum of association and rules and regulations. And for registration of Section 8 company, again, memorandum and articles of association. So these are the documents which are prepared under the respective registrations. Then coming to stamp duty, trust deed to be executed on non-judicial stamp paper. Of course, this is technical. Let us not. Then under the society again, we stamp duty required for memorandum of association and rules and regulation. Nominal fee is charged. It is not too expensive. And then Section 8 company stamp duty will be valued from on a state to state basis. So this is the stamp duty part. Members required, most important, very important. How many members or trustees are required under the different constitutions? For a trust, you need at least 2 trustees. Minimum 2 trustees are required. You can have as many trustees as you want, but minimum 2 are required. As far as the society is concerned, society may you need 7 members. For any society to be registered under the Societies Registration Act, minimum 7 members are required. And then again, Section 8 company, minimum 2 for a private company and 7 for a public limited company. Board of Management. Trusts are governed by their trustees. That is called the Board of Trustees. Societies are usually managed by a governing council or managing committee. Then Section 8 company is managed by the Board of Directors. Legal title of the property. As far as the trust is concerned, the title of the property is with the trustees. Under a society, it is held in the name of the society. And in a Section 8 company, the property is held under the name of the company. Revocable, irrevocable. Now, this is also a very important point. Public charitable trusts are generally irrevocable. You cannot revoke a public charitable trust. And as far as society is concerned, the society may be dissolved. Dissolution must be approved by at least 3/5 of the society's members. And going further, the assets have to be merged with some other, society which has got similar objects. So generally, society is also called irrevocable because the society, again, Societies Registration Act, after you get the certificate under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, by default, the rules and regulations or the sections laid down under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act become applicable. So generally, in my opinion, society is also more or less irrevocable as far as Maharashtra is concerned. Section 8 company may be dissolved, as you all know, as per the provisions. Then annual compliance. Charitable trust, as far as a charitable trust is concerned, you have to file the returns with the income tax department. At the same time, you have to file the accounts with the charity commissioner also. As far as the society is concerned, since it is governed by Maharashtra Public Trust Act, again talking about Maharashtra, you have to submit the accounts to the charity commissioner as well as the income tax department. Section 8 company, you have to submit the accounts to the MCA and the income tax department. So this is the annual compliance part, and annual compliance as far as the society is concerned, I would like to put one more point here, that wherever there is a change in the committee of the society or the working committee of the society on a yearly basis, annually, in that particular society also you will have to convey the change in the committee members or the change in the working committee members or the change in the office bearers on an annual basis. So that is one more annual compliance which a society will have to do. Annual filing to be done online. Again, nowadays everything is online, but of course, as far as a trust and society is concerned, the returns are, the accounts are filed annually with the relevant annexures and with the relevant accounts, etc., etc. And then acknowledgement is generated from the website of the charity commissioner. That acknowledgement has to be again certified by the trustees and the auditors if the accounts are audited, and then the copy has to be submitted manually to the charity commissioner's office. So this is the process of annual filing of accounts as far as a charitable trust is concerned. Of course, society also the same things apply because it is again governed by the Maharashtra Public Trust Act. And Section 8 company, again annual filing has to be done to the MCA, and annual returns have to be filed to the income tax department. So this is the annual filing. Cost factor, of course, trust and society are on the lower side. Section 8 company is a bit expensive, but it has got some other advantages as compared to trust and society. The biggest advantage is as far as the Section 8 company is concerned, everything is online. Nothing is manual. Whereas in a trust and society, there are a lot of manual compliances. Then grant or subsidy by the government. So the trust or society is less preferred. Of course, I would like to, I would not like to go 100% with this, because generally in my experience, I have seen that trust and societies registered under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act also usually get grant or subsidies from the government based on the merits of the case. And Section 8 company, of course, it is more preferred as compared to the trusts. Foreign contribution, FCRA, Foreign Contribution Registration Act, less preferred. The trust and societies are less preferred, and Section 8 company are mostly preferred. But I have got many clients who have got their FCRA registration, even if they are registered under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act. So there is, it is not a difficult task to obtain FCRA registrations, provided that there are merits in the case. Of course, merits are required in all the cases. Just who can form a charitable trust? Again, it is a definition part. So I would just run through it. As per Section 7 of the Indian Trust Act, a trust can be formed by every person competent to contract, again, by or on behalf of a minor, but subject in each case to the law for the timing in force as to the circumstances and extent in and to which the author of the trust may dispose of the trust property. A person competent to contract and competent to deal with. Besides individual, association of person, an institution, a limited company, a Hindu undivided family through its karta can also form a trust. Who can become a trustee? Again, it is a definition part. Every person capable of holding property can become a trustee. A person who is competent to contract, an executor of a will may become a trustee by his dealing with the assets. Can an NRI be a trustee? Now, this is one more important question that we have been facing throughout our practice, whether an NRI can become a trustee. Of course, an NRI can become a trustee. Non-resident Indians are not specifically debarred under the provisions of Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950 or the Indian Trust Act from taking up office of a trustee. But reasons for removal of trustee includes the following. Absent for a continuous period of 6 months from India without the leave of the charity commissioner and leaves India for a purpose of residing abroad. In such a circumstance, it is better that such NRI trustees should voluntarily resign from the trust and they should submit a change report to that effect to the charity commissioner's office. Now, what all is required? What all are important for a trust to be formed? The existence of an author, settler of the trust, or someone at whose instance the trust comes into existence. The very most important thing for a trust to be registered is under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950 is that you should have a settler. First thing. Then clear intention of the settler, purpose of the trust property, beneficiaries of the trust, again public at large. There must be divesting of ownership by the author settler of the trust in favor of the beneficiary or the trustee. So these are the essential ingredients for a trust to be formed. Then again, essentials of a valid charitable or religious trust. There are 4 essential elements of a valid charitable or religious trust. Charitable or religious object, capacity to create the trust, certainty of the object and dedication thereto, and concurrence of law. Of course, the law has to be concurred at all times. So what all is required for registration under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act? First and foremost, application form in Schedule 2. Court fee stamp, again a very nominal expense, certified copy of the trust deed, consent letter of the trustees, very important, address proof of the office premise of the trust. If the office premises does not belong to the trust, in that case, the ownership of the premises has to be proved and the necessary documentation has to be submitted and NOC has to be obtained from the owner of the premise. Then self-attested copies of ID and address proof of all trustees, that is KYC of all the trustees, tabular details containing name, address, photograph, age of all trustees, affidavit and paper notice. Of course, paper notice for a trust to be registered under Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950, a paper notice period of 1 month is allotted under Section 7A, I believe. So 1 month paper notice is there. If there is no objection, generally there is no objection, but it is a formality which has to be concurred to. Then again, requirement for registration under Societies Registration Act, more or less the same things. Only one difference is where there is a reference to any particular existing places of worship like temple, mosque, church, etc. Sufficient documentary proof required. That I believe, if the trust is to be registered under Maharashtra Public Trust Act also, in that case also sufficient documentary proof is required. And copy of for a institution to register under Societies Registration Act, copy of minutes book containing resolutions, etc. This is the additional requirement which has to be fulfilled. Now, the practical aspect, let me come to the practical aspect about registration. Once all these things are done, you have to submit the papers to the relevant officer, and the officer will give you a date. On that date, he will check all the documents submitted by you, and if he feels that some corrections are to be done or some other things are required, he will let you know. And after completing the application as per their requirement and as per the law, then your trustee will be called for hearing. The trustee, I believe in our practice, we have seen that the trustee is generally called once, and then the trustee goes there, signs in front of the officer, and then if there is a case of paper notice, the paper notice period kicks in, and after the paper notice period, we are called once again by the charity commissioner's office, and then you get your certificate. Earlier, the registration used to take a lot of time. Nowadays, the process has become a little fast. Generally, in our experience, we have seen when we register under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, 1.5 to 2 months, 45 days to 60 days, we get the certificate. And if the organization is registered under the Society Registration Act, In that case, I believe like 20 days, 20 to 30 days. We get the certificate between 20 to 30 days. So that is the time. Of course, because of this COVID circumstances, there have been delay in getting the registration certificates, but that is a very unusual circumstance. Let's hope that such things don't continue further. So that is the scenario as far as the practical aspect is concerned. Now, one more thing which I would like to tell you all the members, that basically when you form a charitable trust, whether it is a trust under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act or the Society Registration Act, there are certain clauses which everybody should take care of. Everybody should take care of that. All these clauses should be there in your documentation. Why? Because if these clauses are not there, and if you go for an application for registration under Section 12A of the Income Tax Act, or approval under Section 80G of the Income Tax Act, in that particular time, if these clauses are not there, the Income Tax Department may deny the application. So I have mentioned all this. Basically, there are the 6 clauses. The clauses are irrevocability clause, beneficiary clause, dissolution clause, and utilization clause, investment clause, and alteration and amendment clause. So it is better that all the documents should cover all the 6 clauses so that you don't face any problem when you go for registration under Section 12A or approval under Section 80G of the Income Tax Act. Otherwise, if these clauses are not there, in our practical experience, we have seen that many a times we come across charitable trusts which are formed earlier, and then when they come for 12A registration, we have to again go to the charity commissioner, get the things modified, get the things changed by a change report or by a scheme as the case may be. And then after the order from the charity commissioner, or at least when we get the acknowledgement from the charity commissioner, we again go to the Income Tax Department and revive the application of Section 12A and 80G. Of course, under the present scenario, let us see how the things turn up, because this is very early stage as far as the after the new amendments as far as re-registration and re-approval have kicked in. But these clauses are, in my opinion, in any case, very important. Everybody should incorporate all these 6 clauses in your constitutional documents. There have been, I have mentioned certain case laws. There have been case laws whereby the honorable courts have decided that it is not mandatory that you should have a dissolution clause and all those things. But to avoid, I mean, for small trusts, you cannot afford to go to the judicial authorities. It is very time consuming also, and it is very expensive also. So it is better to find a midway. Let us comply with whatever is required by the Income Tax Department, and let us follow their SOP basically. Otherwise, it will be a problem for us. Problem for us as well as the client also. So it is better to incorporate all these 6 clauses so that the entire process goes on very smoothly. As I have already told that once you are registered under Societies Registration Act, you get a registration under Maharashtra Public Trust Act also. And talking about the annual compliance, if you want to submit your accounts to the charity commissioner, the charity commissioner does not recognize the registration under Societies Registration Act as far as submission of accounts or submission of any other application is concerned. So what I suggest is that as soon as you get your registration under the Societies Registration Act, you should approach the charity commissioner for your second certificate. That is the certificate under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act. Once you get that second certificate, then you can submit your accounts. Otherwise, you will not be in a position to submit the accounts. So it is better to obtain the second certificate as soon as possible. Then Register of Trusts. Talking about Register of Trusts is maintained by the Office of Charity Commissioner in Schedule 1, containing all the details. Generally, I insist a lot of my clients now to obtain the Schedule 1 and the certified. And one more very important thing I would like to put across over here before I forget, that once your trust is registered, you should always obtain a certified true copy from the Charity Commissioner's office. Why? Because when you put up your trust deed for registration, for example, and if there are certain changes suggested by the Charity Commissioner, and after you do some changes, the applicant trustee signs there, he gives his initials, he approves the changes, and only then you are granted the registration. But in the process, there is a difference between what you have applied, what trust deed you have given at the time of application, to be precise, and the trust deed modified and rectified by the Charity Commissioner's office. So that is why it is always important that you obtain a certified true copy of the trust deed from the office of the Charity Commissioner. Because when you go for your 12A registration and your ATG registration, you will need this certified true copy. The Income Tax Department insists for the certified true copy. Only when we submit the certified true copy, the application is proceeded further. So it is better you obtain the certified true copy of the constitutional document from the office of the Charity Commissioner. Changes, as far as now, once your trust is registered, talking about changes, there are many instances whereby your trustees resign, new trustees are coming, and one more important, very important factor, in your trust deed, always see to it that minimum number of trustees and maximum number of trustees are mentioned after giving due thought to the particular trust requirement. Because in our experience, we have seen that when you are registering a trust under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, suppose if you are saying that minimum trustees are 5 and maximum trustees are 7. In that case, what happens? Suppose if your trustees fall, somebody dies, somebody expires, there is a retirement due to death. In that case, there is a chance that the number of trustees may fall below 5. And if you want to add trustees, if you want to add certain trustees and the number of trustees are going beyond the maximum limit. So now, in that case, you again have to go to the Charity Commissioner, get the things changed. It is again a lengthy process. So it is better, as far as Maharashtra Public Trust Act registration is concerned, I recommend that the minimum number of trustees, you should always mention that the minimum number of trustees should be 2, and maximum is as per the need of the trust, as you may so decide. But be very careful that the minimum trustees you mention as 2, so that you can be flexible with the number of trustees with the admissions and retirements. So that is very crucial. Well, one more, section I have covered here, section 31A with rule 16A, filing a budget. Of course, the threshold limit which is given is for public religious trust, it is 5,000, and other charitable trust is 10,000. So all the charitable trusts who have got collections beyond this threshold limit should file their budgets. And what is the system of filing the budget? You have to file the budget before the commencement of the relevant financial year. That is, for example, if you are talking about 21-22, you should file the budget before 1st of April, and in fact, the Act says that you have to submit the budget by February 21 for the financial year 21-22, for example. So, but in our practical experience, we have seen that whenever we are going with the budget, in some of the cases, where the client insists that, sir, hamara budget we file kar do, we always tell them that it is not practical, and even the Income Tax Department, the Charity Commissioner's office is not entertaining the budgets. But then too, we have seen in our practical experience that they don't entertain the budgets. Of course, there is a provision in the law. I think there should be amendment as far as the submission of budget is concerned. Now, section 35 of the Maharashtra Public Trust Act talks about the permission of investments other than the prescribed modes. Section 35 gives, under section 35, you can request the Charity Commissioner, giving a valid reason that I have got so and so funds. These funds are invested in so and so area now. I want to change the area of investment from this from area A to area B. For example, I want to withdraw the money from the fixed deposits, and I want to deposit the money in debt-oriented fund or some other investments where you are getting a better return. So you are being heard for that, and after the Charity Commissioner is satisfied, they will grant you a permission. But of course, mind well, I would like to tell all the participants that not only section 35, you should also take into consideration section 11.5 of the Income Tax Act. 11.5 also gives you specified modes where you can invest your money, your surplus money. So be very careful, not only section 35, 11.5 also should be complied with. Otherwise, you will end up paying taxes, unnecessary taxes. Of course, that is income tax is not my subject today. That is why I'm not elaborating on that. But my humble request is that Section 35 of the Maharashtra Public Trust Act as well as Section 11(5) of the Income Tax Act both should be complied with. Now, as far as permission regarding immovable property is concerned, under Maharashtra Public Trust Act, you don't need any permission for purchasing the property. But one thing is very sure that once you purchase a property in a charitable trust, you have to intimate to the charity commissioner through a change report regarding the purchase of the property, so that the charity commissioner makes a note of the property in the Schedule 1. Then there are certain threshold limits given for leasing the property. The property cannot be leased for more than 30 years. No, agricultural land cannot be leased for more than 10 years. Non-agricultural land cannot be leased for more than 3 years. All these limits are there. So the limits are mentioned. You can go through it. Section 36 talks about it. Again, if the trustees want to take loans from the banks on behalf of the trust, under Section 36A, you have to take the permission from the charity commissioner. 36B says that movable and immovable property, you have to, for every movable and immovable property, you have to maintain a register. That is okay. Now, as far as charitable hospitals are concerned, Section 41AA, Rule 25A, what they are saying is 2% of your total billing should be transferred to an indigent patient fund, and that money shall be used for treating the very poor patients. So this is about 41AA. These are all state-aided hospitals, whereby you have to treat the patients free of charge or at a concessional rate, as the case may be. So this is about 41AA. Just a minute, sir. Section 41C is about, collecting cash for charitable purpose. Of course, permission has to be taken from the charity commissioner's office. The accounts have to be submitted within 2 months. The permission cannot be granted for more than 6 months. So all these things are mentioned in 41C. But in my experience, I have never come across such a client who has taken temporary permission for collection. So generally, I am dealing with charitable trusts who register themselves and they carry on with their activities as far as charitable activities are concerned, basically. But of course, Section 40, there might be situations where you need funds for a particular cause, only for that particular cause for a particular period. In that case, Section 41C might help you. Now, this is a very important section, Section 50A. 50A section is a scheme for change. Is a scheme for change. There are many changes which cannot be done just through a change report. For that, you have to execute a scheme. For example, changing the name of the trust. For example, changing the objects of the trust. For example, just now I discussed talking about those 6 clauses. In the case of those 6 clauses, you may have to execute a scheme. Scheme is again a very, lengthy and expensive process, of course. So it is better that as much as possible, you try to make your document foolproof. So that, of course, there might be situations even after that whereby you may need a change. But as far as practicable, I request all the participants to make the trust deed foolproof based on the keeping into mind both the Maharashtra Public Trust Act as well as the Income Tax Act. So, permitting use of funds for other objects, again, Section 55 talks, the charity commissioner has been given the power, the charity commissioner's office has been given the power to permit the use of funds for some other objects. Just in case, you have prepared a trust deed, the trust deed is very old, and there are certain objects which have become important nowadays. And you may want to spend some money on those objects. In these circumstances, you may approach the charity commissioner under Section 55 and you may request them to grant permission for use of the funds for objects other than the objects mentioned in the constitutional documents. So this is about section 55. Contribution money, a lot of people are aware that till the year 2007, 2% contribution money was subject to a certain deductions and exemptions. 2% contribution money was to be paid based on the total collections of the charitable trust. But Bombay High Court, in response to a PIL, has stayed the collection from the year 2007. Many of the trusts were providing the amount, that we may land up paying at some point of time. But nowadays, I mean, nobody is making a provision of this amount. But of course, we have to submit the relevant schedule. We have to submit the relevant schedule for the contribution money. Then many times a lot of people may face a question that when you see a Maharashtra Public Trust Act registration certificate, the numbers which are allotted is like A so and so, B so and so, C so and so. This prefix is always there in the form of alphabets A to F. Now, what does these alphabets stand for? So alphabet A is for Hindu Temple Trust, alphabet B is for Masjid Trust, alphabet C is for Church Trust, alphabet D is for Parsi Temple Trust, E is for Charitable Trust, and F is for Multi-Purpose Trust. So these are the 6 alphabets which are used by the Charity Commissioner when they grant the registration based on the type of the trust. Now, nowadays, I mean, a very important amendment, just a minute. A very important amendment has nowadays come, deregistration of trust. Many of you must be facing a situation whereby your trust has been deregistered, or you may not even know that your trust is deregistered. Why these trusts are deregistered? The reasons for deregistering the trust are given. Point number A to 5. What are these points? When the purpose of the trust is completely fulfilled, when its purpose becomes unlawful, when the fulfillment of its purpose becomes impossible by destruction of the trust property, when the trust being revocable is expressly revoked, or when the trustees are found not doing any act for fulfilling object of the trust. So these are the situations. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. These are the situations whereby your trust may be deregistered. But keeping these points apart, in our experience, we have seen the trusts which are deregistered are the trusts which are not complying on a yearly basis. For example, a particular trust has not submitted the accounts for the last, say, 10 years. A particular society has not intimated the change in the committee. A particular society has not intimated the change in the purchase of the property. So these are some of the reasons whereby the Charity Commissioner is deregistering the trusts. And in my experience, I have seen that there are many trusts which are deregistered, but still they are continuing with the activities without paying attention to that particular subject. They are filing the returns with the Income Tax Department. Of course, they cannot file the returns to the Charity Commissioner because their name is deregistered. I mean, their name is sort of struck off. So I suggest all the members, if they have got charitable trusts as their clients, they should see that the yearly compliance is done properly. In the Income Tax Department also, with the changes which have been effected by Finance Act 2020 and 21, there is a clause which says that the 12A can be cancelled if there is non-compliance in some other act. For example, if you have not complied under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act, the Income Tax Department may cancel your 12A. Similarly, the Charity Commissioner's office may also take a step whereby if you are not complying under the Income Tax Act, they may deregister your trust. So it is very important that the relevant acts are complied with. Many trusts have been deregistered. I have seen in my experience. And then once if the trust is deregistered, we have to file an appeal to the Charity Commissioner to restore the name of the trust. So that is again a very lengthy process and an expensive process. So it is better that we comply on a yearly basis. Because the charity commissioner, in the charity commissioner's office, there is nothing called time barring. Even if the accounts are pending for 10 years, you can submit the accounts for 10 years. And if you don't submit the accounts, they will deregister your trust. So it is better if please always tell your clients that only if you are ready to do all these compliances, you should come up with a trust. Otherwise, they may land up paying a lot of money as far as restoration of name is concerned, professional fees is concerned, penalties are concerned. The charity commissioner is charging penalty for delay in submission of accounts also. The charity commissioner is, you are supposed to condone the delay in submitting the accounts also. The condonation has to be done, the penalties are being paid. I have, in so many of my trusts, I have seen thousands of rupees are being paid as penalties, even if there is no transaction. I mean, in many of the trusts, they are functioning on a very meager scale. But just to keep the trust alive and just to do the compliances, you have to do all these things. Condonation of delay, you have to pay the necessary penalties, and all these things are there nowadays. And it is a time-consuming process because a lot of activities in Charity Commissioner's office is done on a manual basis. Of course, as far as Section 8 company is concerned, the things are a little bit easier, but there again, if you are not complying in time, the penalties are also levied by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs also. So one has to be very careful that once you are coming up with a charitable trust, please make sure that you have a proper professional who can do all these things for you. Okay, so that is about deregistration. The rest is all, basically it is just a text. Anybody who is interested further can go through the text in detail. Of course, the order passed by the Charity Commissioner can be appealed against under Section 70. Then, when talking about Schedule 9 and Schedule 9C, public trust having gross annual income above rupees 5,000 should prepare balance sheet in Schedule 8 and income expenditure in Schedule 9. Schedule 9C regarding calculation as regard contribution money as per Section 58 to be submitted, audit report is to be submitted. Public trust having gross annual income not above 5,000 should submit details of income and expenditure in Schedule 9A and details of expenditure in Schedule 9B. So these are the schedules which are given for submission of accounts. Again, I have already discussed this, that the accounts have to be submitted online and acknowledgement is generated. That acknowledgement has to be certified by the trustees and the auditors if the accounts are audited. And then you have to submit that particular acknowledgement to the Charity Commissioner's office. And wherever there is a delay, a condonation of delay has to be filed. The condonation of delay has to be notarized, basically. And notarized, the notary is also to be done, registered notary. Normal notary will not do. So this is the procedure which we are following nowadays. Now coming to Section 8 company, Section 8 company is more or less again a text part. That what all is required for a Section 8 company, what is the process to register a Section 8 company. The process is pretty similar as far as other LLPs and private limiteds are concerned. Generally, in my experience, I have seen that nowadays, a lot of companies, because let me touch upon briefly as far as CSR is concerned, many private limited companies and limited companies fall under the CSR bracket. They have to earmark certain funds as corporate social responsibility. And then these companies come up with a Section 8 company because that is very convenient to them because they are already into a private limited company and limited company. And then the funds which are to be earmarked as CSR is transferred to the Section 8 company. So transferred to the Section 8 sister concern basically. And then the charitable activity is done from that particular Section 8 company. Or they may come up with a charitable trust under Maharashtra Public Trust Act also. So this is the new phenomena which has come up nowadays, that rather than donating the amount to be earmarked as CSR to some other trust, the private limiteds and the public limiteds, they are coming up with their own foundations and charitable trusts, and they are spending the CSR amount through those organizations. So this is the new trend which we are seeing nowadays. the requirement for registration under Section 8, these are the requirements, what all is required in DSC, the routine requirements, and the entire process is online. You get a license under Section 8, and then again, the annual compliance we have already discussed, we have to annually comply as far as the accounts and auditors, etc., is concerned. So that is briefly about Section 8 company. So I think I have covered with, Maharashtra Public Trust Act, then the Societies Registration Act, and then basically Section 8 company. And then I have covered the practical aspects also, which we are doing on a day-to-day basis. I may have skipped. I think I was. I'm audible now. I think some issue was there.
Yes, audible.
Yes. So now, some practical aspects, if the members are facing, they can always ask. Otherwise, I have tried to cover the maximum as far as all the practical aspects which we are facing on a day-to-day basis. But one thing I would recommend over here, that people who are into the practice of charitable trust, they should practice both. They should practice the Charity Commissioner's office also, and they should practice the Income Tax Department also, because that is the right way to do. Otherwise, if you are dealing only with the Income Tax Department, lot of things which are important at the Charity Commissioner's office level, you may not know. So it is always better to deal with both the offices, so that you can provide good services to your clients, and you may, in the bargain, you may get more and more clients, because you are dealing with both the offices. That is what basically we are into. We are dealing with both the things. So that is my recommendation to all the participants who want to develop their career in this particular subject, and the students also who are participants out here. I mean, income tax also, of course, there are only 2 or 3 sections as far as income tax is concerned, but those 3 sections are, there is a lot to learn in those sections, and there is a lot of complication, lot of amendments there on a day-to-day basis. So I think, just a minute, let me check if there is anything left out. So this is about the requirement procedure. Procedure is everybody can go through it. Procedure. That's it. I think I have covered as far as my subject on formation of charitable trust is concerned. I am open for queries now, so the participants can shoot their queries basically, so that I can try to answer those queries.
There was some issue. I could not able to unmute. Rupa,
Yeah.
please, Shirish Kelkar sir को unmute करो.
Yes, sir.
Ravi, if you can see, there are certain questions in chat box.
Just a minute, sir.
Good evening, friends. This is Chartered Accountant Shirish Kelkar, and hello, Ravi sir. We have few questions in the chat box, which I would like to ask on behalf of our
please.
esteemed members.
Please.
So somebody is asking, I think Chetan Jadhav is saying, what is the relevance of filing a budget? And if you don't file a budget, so what if the same is not filed? So what is the implication of that?
See, relevance, sir, as far as relevance is concerned, there is a section which says that you have to file a budget and the threshold limits are given, which are highly unpractical. I told you that the limit of 5,000 and 10,000 is a very meager budget. Meager, collection, basically. But as far as we are concerned, we have not been filing budgets. In one of the clients' case, we tried the budget. But that filing of budget is not entertained by the Charity Commissioner's office. Say that, sir, क्या वो ठीक है एक्ट में है लेकिन कोई जरूरत नहीं है अभी हम लोग तो क्या करेंगे ऐसा ना हाँ बोल सकते हैं ना बोल सकते हैं ऐसा तो कहते हैं. So it is according to me, practically speaking, it is not relevant. We have not been filing budgets in any of our cases.
Okay, so you mean they are taking a lenient view
Yes.
towards the budget as such,
True,
filing
true.
of the budget.
Very true, very true.
Okay.
Very
And okay, so second question is irrelevant. What is penalty if you don't file? But Chandra Mohan, he's asking, what is the penalty for non-filing of an annual return to the Charity Commissioner?
The annual return non-filing of penalty is, it is like a discretionary power given to the Charity Commissioner or the additional Charity Commissioner. In our practical experience, we have seen that if the trust has got a higher turnover, for example, the collection is on a higher side, in that case, they may levy a penalty of 1,000 rupees also. And if the trust is relatively very small, they may not charge penalty also. Or they may charge a very minor penalty also, say 100, 200 rupees also, just for the delay in filing the return. But no set guidelines given for the levy of penalty for delay in filing of the returns or non-filing of returns.
I see. He's asking further how to check whether the trust is deregistered or not.
See, as far as the deregistration is concerned, you can always log into the website of the Maharashtra Charity Commissioner, and then you can try to search the name of the trust. And in our experience, we have generally found that we can see the names which are deregistered. Of course, the find process is a very difficult one. The other thing is we can go to the Charity Commissioner's office and we can share the registration certificate with the officers out there, and they can tell you immediately whether the trust is deregistered or not.
Okay.
Online also we can find out, but sometimes it is difficult to find out, and just for a double check, we should always check with the Charity Commissioner's office also.
Right. Sir, Satish Kadam has asked a question. I think probably you would have answered this. What is your experience in online registration of public trust with the Charity Commissioner, and how long it takes?
Online registration is, the experience is not very good. We are doing all the filings online, offline only.
I see.
Online is not a very good experience. We have to submit offline. We have to visit the Charity Commissioner's office, and then he points out the corrections, if any. And that is how the process goes on. Online is not a very good experience.
Okay, sir. CA Ananta Divekar has asked a question. While preparing memorandum, which language would you prefer, Marathi or English?
Generally, we prepare all the memorandum and rules and regulations in English. And that particular language is entertained by the Charity Commissioner's office. That is not a problem. Of course, in Marathi also, definitely they will entertain, because that is a regional and local language. But generally, we prepare all the documents in English.
Right. One practical question which Yogesh Jain is asking.
Yeah.
If two committee of the trust are under litigation and one of them has all the documents of the new committee which is on the board, so what if the old committee is also filing accounts with trust as there is no password or login? So what to do? I mean, can you approach trust office and get the login password?
Of course, generally, in such cases, you'll have to go to the charity commissioner. I mean, it is
tomorrow. You call me up. What is
It is a
Mr.
contest.
1 hour
Karunakar,
before. Yeah.
Mr. Karunakar, please mute yourself.
It is a contest matter, sir, basically. In such a circumstance, you will have to approach to the charity commissioner, and then he will hear your case, and then he will decide who is the, right authority to file the accounts, etc., etc.
Okay, sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
We have to file a change report to the trust office.
Hmm.
So the limit is what, 30 days normally? I mean, I'm a part of a Rotary where every club has a, charity trust.
20 days,
And
sir.
it so happens, sometimes it gets delayed like 6 months, 1 year, you don't file the change report.
Right, sir.
So what happens, this is one, and once filed, one change report is filed, how long it takes to, they will call for hearing and what process do they follow?
First thing is like the time limit is 90 days for intimating any change to charity commissioner's office.
Okay.
And then the process is once you file the change report, you will get the code number.
Mhm.
And the date is given to you that on this date you have to come for the hearing. And that on that hearing date you have to put up your case, and if the process is being followed properly, they will issue an order against the change report.
But in case if all the trustees are not available on that particular day, what's your experience? Do they call two, three times?
No, sir. All the trustees are not required.
I see.
When you file a change report, the applicant trustee signs the change report.
Okay, right.
The applicant trustee is called for all practical purposes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. If anybody has any more question, please type out fast into the chat box. Sir is ready to take up. Or else we are almost to the close of the session.
Yogesh, then you can unmute and ask question. You have raised your hand.
Yes, hello.
If you can close the screen sharing, we'll have a larger view, sir.
Yeah, I'll stop.
Please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. In case of that litigation question, what is the liability of an auditor? In that case, we are filing the documents such as Form 10B. What is our liability in that case? Do we have any consequences if the case is under litigation? Both the parties are not ready to leave the committee on board.
See, according to me, as far as it becomes more or less a litigation, but of course, the litigation is at the level of the charity commissioner's office, right? And as far as your question is concerned, 10B is concerned. 10B is related to your income tax department. So I don't think that the chartered accountant will have any consequence till the point that he has done his due diligence and he has done the things properly and he is being properly appointed. The appointment is crucial out here. If you are appointed as a chartered accountant, the process of appointing a chartered accountant is followed properly or not.
Okay.
If the process is not followed properly, I would suggest that we should not take up the assignment.
Okay, sir. What is the exact procedure for that appointment?
The procedure, they will be having their meetings, they will be having the meetings, they will pass the resolution. And if the resolution is properly passed and then you are appointed, then it is fine. It is not a problem with us.
Okay. And sir,
As far as your case is concerned, more details are required. Why there is a litigation? Why there are two committee members? Because I have never come across such a situation where there are two sets of committee members.
okay. Because no, sir.
Yeah.
Old committee has resigned, and one of the member of the committee is not ready to leave the board. And the other committee.
The resignation of the old committee, has the committee, the resignation of the old committee being intimated to the charity commissioner's office?
That I'll have to check.
So generally, what happens is, what we are supposed to do, and one more thing, your organization, your institution, whether it is registered under the Societies Registration Act or Maharashtra Public Trust Act.
1860 Society.
1860, right? So 1860 mein generally what happens is, the term of the office bearers is defined. For example, every 2 years the committee changes. So as far as the charitable trust is concerned, the charitable trust has to submit the new committee to the charity commissioner's office and take the order from the charity commissioner, saying that the old committee has resigned and this is the new committee. The necessary resolutions are submitted to the charity commissioner, and once the charity commissioner gives the order that this old committee has resigned and this is the new committee, then there is no litigation as such. What I understand from your question is, if this process has not been followed,
Yes,
the committee has not been intimated to a charity commissioner.
okay. So in that case, it is advisable to continue with the old committee, or
No, I would not say that. Because the old committee has got no sanction. If the new committee is not duly appointed after say 3 years, if there is a term of 3 years, after 3 years, what process the charitable trust or institution has followed, whether they have called a meeting, then the change in the committee has to be decided, and that change has to be intimated to the charity commissioner. And on the basis of your submission, the charity commissioner will issue an order. So if that process is not followed, so first of all, that process has to be done. And if that process is not done, everything is in a standstill.
yeah, correct. Okay.
So that process is very crucial, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, we have one more question from Kairavi Gudka. In case if we want to make a project for the
Yeah.
trust to carry out its activities, the memorandum of association is to be prepared. Should the same be filed with the commissioner?
You want to prepare a project. Project, you want to, memorandum is already filed at the time of registration of the trust. And then when you are talking about a project, again, it is a question of budget. You may come up with a project. You can file that project with the charity commissioner, saying that this is the project. Of course, the charity commissioner will not object to it, because once he has given you the registration, the charitable trust can act within the rules and regulations or the trust deed which has been sanctioned by the charity commissioner. So, within those 4 corners of that constitutional document, you can carry on your functions. And it being a quasi-judicial body, you can pass resolutions, you can prepare the necessary project, and on the basis of the project, you can do your fundraising and execute your project accordingly.
Okay.
So you may file with the charity commissioner, you may not file with the charity commissioner.
Thank you, sir. From Swaminath Rahul, we have one more question, sir. What is the due date of filing accounts for 2021?
2021, now again, the due date has been extended again, 31st December.
Okay.
The due date of the charity commissioner more or less moves as due dates. So one can rest assured, whatever is the income tax due date, more or less, you can rest that the charity commissioner's due date is also the same.
Okay, sir.
It comes at par with the income tax department.
Yes. Thank you, sir. CA Ananta Divekar has asked a question. The format in the society, the format in the Society Registration Act and the Maharashtra Public Trust Act of final accounts is different. Which should be preferred?
Maharashtra Public Trust Act.
Okay.
Maharashtra Public Trust Act should be preferred. Why? When you are dealing with Maharashtra Charity Commissioner, when you are forming a trust under Society Registration Act, you are given a certificate under the Maharashtra Public Trust Act by default. So for all practical purposes, Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950 will hold good. So I would recommend that you follow the format of the Maharashtra Public Trust Act 1950.
Right. I don't see any more questions, sir.
Wait for 2-3 minutes if something crops up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dear members, if you have any further questions, please feel free to ask. Sir is there to help you out with any of the smallest of the queries.
Okay, sir. Ravi Gupta, sir.
Yeah.
I think you have really given an excellent presentation today on the subject of trust, cooperative society, and the excellent comparison between a trust society and a company, Section 8 company, very much in detail as to how the company, Section 8 company or trust has to be formed, what kind of forms and documents and procedure has to be followed. Is really very useful for all of practitioners. The number of minimum trustees that are required, how to approach the charity commissioner, filing of the budget. I mean, this was something new for me also. I just heard of, but I don't know. We also never used to file.
No.
So I mean, overall, we really have thankful to you for giving us such a wonderful amount of knowledge about this area of trust and cooperative society. And of course, thank you for solving a lot of queries which are asked by our friends, professional friends. So on behalf of Thane branch of WIRC, I extend my hearty word of thanks to you, Ravi Gupta sir. Thanks for sparing a time and extending excellent knowledge on this subject. I will carry this with a round of applause. Whosoever is, I mean, thank you so much. Thank you, Asawa sir, for giving me this responsibility of vote of thanks. And back to Swapnil, please. Thank you.
About the last moment to help us out. Ravi ji, thanks a lot for removing your time, especially on a Friday evening. We are really grateful for sharing it.
Thank you so much.
Long-term basis to all of us. Putting us with all such seminars, it really helps us and encourages us when you come out in large numbers. This will be the end of the session, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We are honored, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.